guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Johanna, and for those of you who are new here, welcome. And for those of you who are returning, welcome back. Here on my channel, I do planner and planner related videos, DIY tutorials, budget videos, as well as the occasional new release video of items that I've listed to my Etsy shop. And if that is of interest to you, please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you hit that little notification bell, you'll always be notified of when I do load a new video. And if you could also comment, like, and share, that would be amazing. So I'd promised to do this, and originally I thought I would do the Happynichi Happy Planner, Half Sheet, Happy Notes, accessories all in one video, but I think that would make a very lengthy video. So what I'll do is I'll break them up into just separate videos. Right now I've got 3 in mind. I might actually have a 4th or 5th, but we'll see how it goes. But for today's video, what we're going to be doing is making our own half sheet, or making a pocket folder that fits the half sheet Happy Notes Happy Planner thing. So this one I actually did a tester last night, and it's got 2 pockets on either side. And then the way that I designed it, it actually opens up. Let me take it off. So that if you wanted to, you would have an inside section that you could put post-it notes or whatnot. Now in the demonstration I'll be showing you today, I'm actually going to give you a few options on what you can do. Now this is not laminated because I am very aware that some of you may not have a laminator. So when I go through the steps, I will show you how you can make one of these without a laminator, and then I'll show you some options with a laminator. So let me put this back and let's get started. The supplies you're going to need are, well, you'll definitely need paper. You'll need some sort of cutting source. I use my paper trimmer, but you can use a scissor, a ruler, whatever, a straight edge if you wanted to. If you have it, use your laminator, because it does take just regular 8.5 by 11 laminating sheets. But if not, again, it just depends on what materials you have at home to make the style that you need to do for you, if that makes sense. But all of them, whether you're laminating or not, will start out the same way. You will want to start out with a 12 by 12 piece of scrapbook paper. Now, if you're not going to laminate this, I would definitely recommend you using a heavier cardstock page. But if you are going to laminate it, depending on how you're going to punch it, you may want to use something very thin. This is very thin, so if I put it in the Happy Planner punch, it should be okay. But again, depending on what punch you have, it definitely works to treat in the arc punch. It may take a little bit finagling in the Happy Planner punch, or it certainly would work with the single hole punch. But again, depending on what you have, if you have a heavy cardstock and laminate, it could just make it really thick. So just be aware, because I don't want you to break your tools. Okay, so we are going to keep one edge that is 12, and then the only cut we're going to make, at least with our cutter, is at 8.5. And we want to make sure this is straight. And we cut at 8.5. You will have a little piece here, but you can just put that to your scrap pile. Now, because I have it, a scoring tool is helpful, because basically this just helps you make the fold lines. But if you don't have a scoring tool, I can show you a way that you can get around it, because really it just helps you fold your product easier. But some people don't have this, and if you're just going to do the one-off project, you may not want to purchase this. I picked this up from Amazon, no surprise there. But really, what we want to do is, with it the long way this way, we want to measure 3 inches up, because we want our folder to be 9 inches tall. And so what you'll want to do is just put some markers across the way so that you can draw a line. Now if you're using, well, let me show you what I mean. So because I've got the 3 dots, I can make a straight line-ish across, and that essentially is a 3-inch pocket. And then on this side, because we do want to fold it like that, we want to bring that in at 4 1/4 because we cut it at 8 1/2. So basically we just want this to be right in the middle. Now when I'm done making the lines, I'll also put it in the scoring tool so you can see how that works. If you have a scoring tool, then you know exactly how that works. If you don't, then you'll see how it works that way. And again, just meet up your lines so that you can get a center point. Now this line right here is not necessary because really you just want to fold your piece of paper in half. But this one here is definitely necessary. I mean, you could make it your pocket bigger, but then your folder would be shorter because a happy note page in the half sheet size is 9 1/4 long. So if you see here, my folder is actually a little bit smaller than my page, and I'm perfectly okay with that. And the reason it is that way is because I wanted to give it as big of a pocket as I could without losing much, without having to add another piece of paper, essentially. So if I have it 9 inches, I have a 3-inch pocket, and it's more than enough to, you know, hold things in here. So just be aware of that. The deeper you make your pocket, the shorter your folder will be. Now, I won't fold it just yet, but because you have the marks, you could just fold it so that you can see your mark, and then you'd know you have a perfectly 3-inch pocket. And then this one's even easier because you're just folding it in half. If you've ever done origami, then you know you just need to make sure you have straight, crisp lines. Now, if you have the score tool, it basically just does that work for you. And apparently my line is off. I don't know if you can see it, but that line should line up to the 4 1/4 there, and it doesn't, but you know, whatever. It's about progress, it's not about perfection. Make sure you stay in the channel, and then you would turn it and score at the 3. Again, if you have the scoreboard, then score at the 3-inch to make a 3-inch pocket, and then score at 4 1/4. No. Yeah, 4 1/4 to get basically half of the size of the paper. Now, what I was trying to say earlier is if you're going to draw a line, you may want to figure out how you want this to look, because if we fold it up and make this our pocket with this on the outside, then you can see the line at least on that side of the page. If you fold it the other way, again, you're going to be able to see that line. Now you can make it decorative, or you can use pencil and just erase it. Now when I did mine, I didn't actually draw anything because I used my scoring tool. But if you are going to you know, try to mark your space, then you definitely want to take that into account. Now on the one that I showed you in mine, I actually cut it. Now you could leave it just like this and run it through your laminator, but I think where the problem would be is this already is 4 1/4, right? Because it's half of 8.5. And if you close off both sides, then it actually gives you a very small space to put things. But if you open it on one side, then you can actually slide things in and out easy enough, but you can also have something that's a little bit larger than your pocket, because it'll keep it secure, but you know, it does give you a little bit more playroom. Now for that part, I'm just going to show you like I did my own. If you wanted to keep that pocket, I mean, again, it's your product, it's your design, you do with what you will, but I'll show you how I did mine. And I did this actually by eyeball. And so you want to cut at an angle all the way up into that line. And again, eyeballing it, just cut at an angle all the way to the line. If you wanted to be super precise, what you could have done was cut that first cut here, and then fold it over, and then cut. And let me just show you the difference between doing this and eyeballing it. So you can see that I'm quite a bit off. To me, that wouldn't bother me, but when I am making these type of folders for my traveler's notebooks, that's what I do. Just because if I'm selling something to someone, I want to make it as perfect as possible. For my own use, I really don't care. Okay. And then again, depending on how you want it to look, assuming that you have just one-sided paper. If you have a double-sided paper, then you'll just need to figure out, you know, what you want to be ultimately your folder, because where the pockets are is the outside of the folder. Now you could leave it as is, and if you weren't going to laminate this, sorry, lost my train of thought, then you could just glue up the side right there. And I would recommend a wet glue. I would not recommend double stick tape. If you do stick anything in there, let me get something. All right, so if you use double stick tape to put this down and you start putting things in your folder, eventually it's going to lift slightly and you're going to get it stuck on the double stick tape. Even if you press it down and score it really tightly, it still will eventually start to lift. If you put wet glue, that won't happen. It won't stick. Because I mean, it might lift, but it won't stay tacky, so you don't have to worry about things sticking in your pockets. So whenever you're doing any sort of paper craft like that, I would always recommend, if you are making a folder, use wet glue, wait till it dries, and then you can go ahead and punch, because that's what I did with mine. Now, because I'm going to be laminating this, I will not be using the glue. But as I said, if you didn't have a laminator, or if you just wanted to test it out, see how functional it was, you could glue the side, and then I would recommend punching this side right here, because then you can open it up and that gives you this middle spot to put some Post-it notes. Now, the way that I did mine, again, to test it out, was I left this outside. That's just paper. There's nothing else on there. If you wanted to protect where it goes on the discs, you could put some washi before you punch it. But on this inside, and you probably can see because there might be a little bit of a glare, is I used packing tape to make this so that my Post-it notes come on and off. So it's sort of like laminating it without actually laminating it, okay? So if you are going to use that trick, then you're going to want to put either clear contact paper or packing tape, again, just to give you a slick surface so that your Post-it notes come off and on, and then you close it up and it keeps it all secure. And I think that's a really good trick. If you didn't want to do anything on the inside, you could actually glue the bottom part as well keep the top open, and then you'd have a secret pocket. Again, it just depends on what you want to use it for. Because it's so long and it would be rather narrow, it could be a good place to hide cash if you wanted to do that, if you sealed up the bottom, because once it's punched, you don't actually, you could glue it, but you wouldn't need to. If the only reason, how do I want to say this? So if you've got your thing in here and you've glued the bottom and you've got a pocket, then it would actually be easier to not glue it, because at least you can access it once you take this off. If you do glue this down and then punch it, you'd have to, you know, try to get to whatever it is you're hiding in there. But again, just to give you some options from a design perspective. Alrighty, so the next step I would do is I would put this through the laminator. Now there's two ways you can do that as well. I hope this video isn't all over the place. I like to give you guys as many options as you can, or as I can, because you may want one function over another function, and you won't know until you try it. And you know, I've got tons of products, so I can, you know, waste mine for science, but I don't want you to waste your product. So one way that you can laminate it is closed like this, and then that way you'll get a seal here, and that's where you're going to punch it. The other way that you can laminate it is open like this, and then you'll get laminate on both sides, so that if you wanted to make this into that post-it dashboard, you could certainly do that, okay? And to show you what I mean, I've actually laminated a few already. And they're here. I don't know why I have so many of this paper, but I do. So let me show you why the two different methods are different. Now, this is directional paper. When you're doing it, like when I did it here, these little things are pointing upwards. Here, it's pointing that way. I don't think it actually matters for this paper, but if you are using directional paper, just be aware of that. So, for this one, we would want to leave our bubble. You know how important the bubble is when you're laminating. Oh, because you don't want to break the seal. And you would just cut all around here. Where's my little piece? Oh, there it is. And then this one, you would also want to, because we're going to punch it, not cutting the bubble is actually, doesn't really matter, because we're going to be breaking the seal anyway. But the more you leave on, the more secure it will be. Now, we're going to only, actually not only, we're going to cut so that we open the pocket at the top. And so now we have that pocket. Now because it's sealed, it will be more difficult to get access to this. But again, if you take it off the rings, open it up, and then, you know, if you do store your cash in there, or, you know, secret treasure map or whatever, just be aware it does make it a little bit difficult. If you've got people with small hands in your family, they might be able to get it, okay? And you're like, but Johanna, it's not a folder. Yeah, I know, guys, I know. Now, I've done this before, so with a very light hand, use your X-Acto knife. You could use a box cutter, but because it is heavier, you might put more pressure, but whichever method you use, just use a very light pressure, because all you want to do is cut the laminate. You don't want to cut the paper underneath it. And then there you have a workable folder. And then you would just do that for the other side. Now the ones that Happy Planner sells, at least for the classic and the big, aren't laminated. I think some of it's heavier cardstock than other portions. I think like the pocket is a heavier cardstock than like the rest of the folder. So they will be more durable than something like this. This is very thin weight paper with very thin laminate. But instead of having to cut down a classic folder and then taping it up, I mean, this is a way that you can use. If you have a laminator, you can make it a laminated style. And if you don't have a laminator, you can do the one that I showed you earlier. So that one will punch, and then I'll put that in the Happynichi, but let's also do this one so I can show you the difference. Now this one we won't cut all the way at the edge. We'll just work around that bubble because it's not sealed. So this one makes that pocket because the laminate was sealed. This one obviously is open. And we'll cut on either side. And you'll probably want to have this as even on either side as possible, because if you punch it when it's together, you want the holes, I would assume, to be in the same spot. I don't know if that makes sense. I think you might be able to see it better once I actually start punching. Now because it is laminated and I did the fold earlier, yeah, that makes it actually pretty easy to fold down. But if you didn't, or if you wanted to do another score and then use your bone folder to get a really good crease, you certainly could do that, okay? And then just like the other one, you're going to want to cut your pocket. And so long as you have just one hole where you can put your X-Acto or your box cutter, then you can pretty much zhuzh the rest of it, because that corner one usually is the one that wants to stick. Okay. So for this one, like I said, you can see that when I folded it, or when I scored it, it wasn't perfectly straight. And you can tell that because you can see some white there. Now, when I put this in the punch tool that I have, and I have the arc punch, this way, then it's not going to butt up evenly. Again, that doesn't bother me. I would take more time with it if I were putting it in my shop. I don't plan on selling these. I'm just doing this for the tutorial. But again, just be aware of that. And because the arc punch is shorter than the Happy Planner punch, the punch probably will just be right there at the paper. Again, it still works. It's just, I want you to be aware of that. And so this one I know will fit here and punch really nicely. If you use your Happy Planner punch, just be aware, Happy Planner punch specifically says it should be only for paper and up to only 3 pieces. Now I have punched laminated things in mine before, but sometimes it sounds like it wants to break on me, so just be aware. I don't want you guys to break your product and then DM me like, Johanna, you just broke my $30 punch. Guys, I'm sorry. All right, so you can see, I think you can see that it is punched, and we do have the slit, so this will go into our Happynichi. Now, if you don't have a punch, or if you don't want to mistakenly break your Happy Planner punch, then there's always a way around that. And that's by using a single hole punch. and a piece of your paper, because then that's how you would use for your, that's what you would use to make the holes. Now I like to put washi on here just to keep it secure. Now the paper is larger than the folder, and I mentioned that earlier, that that's the way it's designed, because our paper is only 12 inches long. So if we want at least a 3-inch pocket, then 9 inches is what we're left over. The paper is 9 1/4, so you're always going to be shorter. So just be aware of that. And again, I mention that because you won't be able to line this up with the top, because then you'll have too much of a gap down here. I would actually play with it and just kind of center it, because I mean, it's not like there's rings on top or bottom, but it may look, it's after work. And I know I've said this before, I should not do tutorials after work, but here we are. But again, I want you to be aware when you're doing this, what you might come across in your process, right? So as centered as I want to get it, I do want it, but it, I do want this to be, the edge of that to be at the edge of the laminate, because then all of my punches, as reasonably as I can make it, will line up, because if your punches go a little bit wonky, then it may make it hard to turn. And I've learned that by experience. And then just use your single hole punch and match up the top of the hole punch with the top of the little umbrella there, and then just punch down the line. And while you won't get the little umbrella shape, this works perfectly fine in your Happy Planner. Again, if you have the arc tool, that definitely will go through this. If you have your Happy Planner punch, just be aware it could break it. Yeah, and this is actually thin laminate and thin paper, so it's actually thinner than you typically would have it. If you have thick paper or thicker laminate, then it just makes it that much harder to punch with the Happy Planner punch. With the arc and with the single hole punch, that's actually not a big deal. And hopefully I'm cutting it on the right side. And I'll show you what I mean by right side in just a second. You just want to cut the slits so it actually can click into your Happy Planner. Now what I meant by right side is you definitely want your pocket to open here. If we had punched it this way, it would have been harder to put things in because the rings would be here. So just, again, be aware of how your product sits. All right, so let's put this in our Happy Planner. So this one just snaps right in. We've got a folder there, we've got a folder here, and then we have that secret compartment if you wanted to use it. If you just didn't, I mean, that's fine. You wouldn't need to cut it, but again, it does give you that option. With this one, let's put it on a different page, at least something cute to look at. You click it on here. You've got a folder there, and you've got a folder there. And if you use this as a dashboard, then you can put your Post-it notes on the inside. You can put more, but just for demonstration purposes. And then when you didn't need it, you could just close it back up. And away we go. All right, so here is one method of a half sheet Happy Notes folder. Here is that other method where it has the top loading pocket. This one has the available dashboard on it. And then if you did not have a laminator, then you could certainly just make one like this, and you could still do the same thing if you wanted to do the top loading pocket, or if you wanted to open it up. Just again, if you are going to do this without laminating it, then put some clear contact paper or some packing tape. And if you are going to be doing it with an inside dashboard, I would definitely recommend to put washi down your sides before you punch it, just to give it as much stability as you can. Again, the more you take this off, the more that's going to get funky, the less time you're going to have your thing. I don't know if any of this makes sense. I hope it does. But here is the folder and the first part of the Happynichi accessory series. Again, I definitely have 2 more ideas. I might have a few more, but I'll definitely do 2 more videos in this series. If you have any suggestions on things you'd like me to try to figure out or create, definitely leave them in the comments below. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Eventually, like I do with all of my tutorials, I want to get a corresponding blog post, but until then, I will put the supplies, or depending on how fast I can get this up. If you don't see the measurements and the supplies in the description box below, you will see a link to a blog post with all that information. So one of those 2 things will happen. All right, guys, that's it for me for now. And as always, aloha.